Hello, everybody, and welcome to American Made. I am your host, Andrew Muller. So excited to be with you today. Movies in Hollywood, right? Something everybody in the United States of America has had some interaction with over the course of their life, whether it be a movie you went and saw that touched you, or something you do with friends and family to relax and unwind, popping in a DVD at home, watching Netflix, whatever. We all consume entertainment, consume things from Hollywood. And this is a uniquely American thing. We really pioneered movies, pioneered cinema in this nation. And it really is something to be proud of the history of it. That is what we used to make, not what we have today. So we're going to be talking about reclaiming the golden age of Hollywood, what it was, what it could be, how it's fallen, how we can resurrect it. And I'm going to share with you as well top 5 movies for America. The American Made approved list of top 5 movies to save America. We'll get into all that. But first, before we do, I want to tell you about our friends at Jase Medical. You maybe heard of them on Tucker Carlson or Glenn Beck. They also sponsor those shows as of the time of this recording. But we all know that medicine, our health, healthcare has become politicized. And a part of that politicization is the supply chain of our pharmaceuticals. And we never know. As COVID happened, we can all learn this story that reliable, real healthcare, reliable, real medical care is something that we've taken for granted as Americans. And we have to take some of that power, some of that responsibility into our own hands. So Jase Medical helps you do that. They have antibiotic cases, medical cases that are custom tailored to you. You can get emergency antibiotics, emergency medical equipment for you and your family in a very professional, very legit, up to snuff manner. They have these great Jase cases. They're incredible. You got to go to jase.com. That's JASE.com. There you can find their ivermectin cases. They sell ivermectin. You can get antibiotics for a whole host of various issues, custom tailored to you through telehealth. If you use promo code Muller, Muller, my last name Muller, Muller, at JASE.com, you will get a significant discount, and you will also support the Second American Revolution that we're trying to bring about in the United States of America, and you'll be able to get some great products to protect you and your family. So let's talk about entertainment in America. Now, recently, this past Memorial Day weekend, I went and saw Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible. It's an incredible movie. You could see some of the imagery from the movie on your screen. It was fantastic. I believe that Tom Cruise is really the last great American movie star. He's somebody who is out here making movies that have real stunts, real drama, real character, real plot lines, but that's mainstream, right? So what I want to be talking about today is how we can get back to the golden era of Hollywood, making great movies. We have some people who are out here trying to make good movies. The Sorbo family, Angel Studios, there was the great Sound of Freedom movie that was brought about the child trafficking from Jim Caviezel. There's some things that pop up from time to time that are good, but it's very rare, few and far between. I talked to my parents who, grew up in the 80s and were in high school years in their 80s. And they said, every weekend there was a quality movie that was coming out. Now we're lucky if we get one good movie a year as Americans. So what happened? We're going to talk about that. This is a political issue as well. It's a highly political issue. President Donald Trump even recognized this. He put out a truth right after the election. And right before he was sworn in, actually, in January of this year, he said, "It's my honor to announce Jon Voight, Mel Gibson, and Sylvester Stallone to be special ambassadors of the great but very troubled place, Hollywood, California. They will serve as special envoys for me for the purpose of bringing Hollywood back," which has been much lost business over the last 4 years to foreign countries like China. Back bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. These 3 very talented people will be my eyes and ears, and I will get done what they suggest. It will be, again, like the United States of America itself, the golden age of Hollywood. So the president of the United States is even recognizing that this is an issue. You'd have to be blind to recognize that this isn't an issue. I want to look into that actually as well, because I haven't heard much from Voight, Gibson, or Stallone on this special envoy to Hollywood assignment. So I'd like to see what they've come up with. But what we consume as Americans at the movie theater, on Netflix, on whatever streaming platform you use, really does contribute to the political narrative that we chart down in the United States of America. And Andrew Breitbart, who love him or hate him, he was completely right about this. He said politics is downstream from culture. And that is exactly right. Politics is downstream from culture. Whenever we have a movie that touches a political agenda or a political principle, very often the political sphere will react to that cultural influence. A good example of that is the movie JFK with Kevin Costner, directed by Oliver Stone. That movie came out in the 90s. It was about Jim Garrison, who was a Louisiana lawyer, who was the only one to bring a court case to trial over the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. That movie had such a strong public reaction, right? That was the cultural element. Such a strong public reaction that Congress ended up passing the John F. Kennedy Information Act, which allowed for a release and a gradual release of John F. Kennedy assassination records. So that's one example. There's more subtle examples of that happening, like Top Gun, the first Top Gun movie. That brought about a huge enlistment in the United States Air Force, people getting fired up about joining their country's military. So all that to say, what comes out of Hollywood does contribute to the national political narrative in America. And what's been coming out of Hollywood has been leftist, Marxist, satanic, anti-God, anti-West propaganda, honestly. And that has affected our political narrative in a very, very bad way. Now, I'm a Christian. I take the Bible literally and believe it's completely true. And it speaks to this principle very personally. In Matthew chapter 6, verses 22 through 23, it talks about the effect on our physical bodies and our souls from consuming bad content. The eye, it says, is the lamp of the body. So then if your eye is clear, but your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. So if the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? So you kind of get this concept of what you put in you becomes a part of you. So if you consistently read bad stuff, if you consistently watch pornography, if you consistently watch depressing content, you are going to have addictive behaviors. You're going to have sinful behaviors. You're going to be darker. But if you read God's word, if you watch edifying, positive, encouraging, challenging things, you are therefore going to receive that sort of outcome, because what you reap is what you sow, right? That's the principle. Philippians 4:8 also says, similarly, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's anything excellent, and if anything worthy of praise, think about these things. So that's a great guiding light, right? For what we should be focusing on in our entertainment endeavors, in our cinematic endeavors, in our literary endeavors as Americans consuming content. And we've seen a complete opposite of that, where the music industry, for example, all modern music for the most part has horrible values. It's about rape, it's about sex, it's about stealing, it's about drugs, rap culture, that kind of stuff has gone really bad. And it used to not be that way. Music used to be more God honoring, used to be more patriotic. It used to be more encouraging. It used to be more powerful. It was all these things. Now it's become a tool of indoctrination by the progressive left. And even the artists themselves have become political actors. Taylor Swift is a great example of this. We've got a picture of Taylor Swift holding Biden 2020 cookies, and she's allowed to have her political beliefs, but you have actors and musicians. There's Tom Cruise there with President Biden. He was a big anti-Trump guy. Tom Cruise was. I remember him saying aliens were going to come down and land on Earth before President Trump would assume the presidency. How wrong he was. But these people have become political actors, people in Hollywood, people in the music industry. And it used to not always be that way. And if they were involved in politics, it was always very positive. It wasn't in your face. It wasn't very reflective in the music. Elvis Presley. I love Elvis. I'm a big Elvis guy. I love his music. It was always patriotic. He did a lot of great Christian music. I think Elvis contributed to the American culture in a positive way. Here was Elvis in a very famous clip being asked a political question about the Vietnam War. Here's his response. This is clip number 1.
Mr. Presley, on the subject of this service, what is your opinion of war protesters, and would you today refuse to be drafted?
Honey, I just seem to keep my own personal views about that to myself because I'm just an entertainer and I'd rather not say.
Do you think other entertainers should keep their views to themselves too?
No, I can't even say that.
I just love that. I just think that's so cool that, obviously Elvis didn't want to contribute to the political conversation. He had his beliefs, but he didn't want to contribute. He's just like, I'm an entertainer. I'm not a politician. I'm just going to pass on that. And then the reporter follows up with a legitimate question, says, well, what about other entertainers? And he says, hey, I can't even control them. But that was normal, right? Where you didn't have these people coming out and, talking about George Floyd, or these people coming out talking about, the tyranny of Donald Trump and oligarchy and democracy. And it's become so exhausting where we're constantly propagandized by Hollywood actors, Hollywood artists, people in the music industry, just pushing a political agenda on the American people. And it's obviously affected our political ideology. And luckily, recently, we've seen a total reversal of that, where you had the whole Hollywood political apparatus behind Hillary Clinton, behind Joe Biden, tons of endorsements, all the big players, Beyonce, all these people coming out and endorsing Biden, endorsing Hillary. But it didn't work. So we're starting to see a cultural change of this. But it's just so important to recognize that what we see in our music, in our movies, does affect politics. So it always wasn't this way. I think when we think of Hollywood now, we always think of it as a progressive leftist propaganda machine. It always wasn't that way. Actually, at one point in time, was very good. Hollywood in America at one point in time, mainly in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, actually put out content that pushed Americanism, that pushed good values, family values, Christian morality. It was a beacon, a representation of the American ethos. And a part of that is represented in Hays Code. And Hays Code, probably 1 in a million Americans know about it, but it was an ethics code. It was officially known as the Motion Picture Production Code. It was a set of guidelines for self-censorship in Hollywood from the 30s, 1934 to 1968, and it was aimed at regulating moral content and ensuring films adhered to certain standards. You can see the little brochure there on the right, a code to govern the making of motion pictures, and that was done by the Motion Picture Association of America. And this code really laid out a series of yeses and nos for what you could put in a movie for it to have the approval of the Motion Picture Association and also make it to the screens. And there are things in Hays Code that I don't agree with. You can get into Hays Code and read about it. There are definitely some archaic things in Hays Code that I don't agree with, some even underlying racist things in Hays Code about interracial marriage. I don't agree with that. Just a disclaimer, but there are a lot of things in Hays Code that were very good, and a lot of things in Hays Code that we could benefit from exponentially if we return to. So there were the big three, they called it, and the big three in Hays Code were the 10 commandments, if you will, of movies, but there were 3 commandments, and this is what it said. And these are quotes from Hays Code. Number 1 of the big 3, quote, "No picture shall be produced which will lower the moral standards of those who see it. Hence, the sympathy of the audience shall never be thrown to the side of crime, wrongdoing, evil, or sin." Wow, that's pretty significant, right? We're not going to make a movie that glorifies evil. We're not going to make a movie that worships wrongdoing or glorifies sin. That's significant. Number 2, it said correct standards of life, subject only to the requirement of drama and entertainment, shall be presented. So we're not going to promote degeneracy. We're not going to promote a warped view of the family. We're not going to promote sin or crime as something to desire or to strive for. Number 3, law, natural or human, shall not be ridiculed, nor shall sympathy be created for its violation. So we're not going to glorify murder. We're not going to glorify rape. We're not going to glorify Grand Theft Auto. We're not going to glorify bad things that bring about the moral decay of our country. Here are a couple other points from Hays Code that is significant. Abortion shall be discouraged, shall never be more than suggested, and when referred to shall be condemned. I mean, this is unbelievable. This is what Hollywood used to put out. No abortion. It should be discouraged. Why? Because in our Declaration of Independence, it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are things that government is instituted among men to protect, God-given rights. So yes, of course, we're not going to make movies that glorify the mass murder of our fellow citizenry. Number two, this one has been completely blown out of the water. The name of Jesus Christ should never be used except in reverence. Oh my goodness, that one has been completely blown out of the water. Throughout the presentation, evil and good are never confused, and that is evil always recognized clearly as evil. Huge, huge point to make, because how many movies have you watched in the last 10 years where it's like, okay, who's the bad guy here? What team should we be rooting for? And there's an element of cinematic art where you can use that and then it reveals who's really good. And maybe it's a thriller, maybe it's something like Murder on the Orient Express, like an Agatha Christie novel, right? Where there's suspense. But at the end of the movie, it's clear who's good and who's bad. A lot of movies nowadays you watch and you're like, wait, who was the good guy? Who was the bad guy? A good example of that was the recent film Civil War. It came out like in 2023, 2024, had Kirsten Dunst in it. It was a movie about what if America went into a civil war. I watched that movie on a plane as I was traveling. And at the end of it, I was like, wait, there was literally no way to tell who was the good guy and who was the bad guy. Now, there was a little bit of a point to that because it was just trying to say war is bad, but it ended up bringing you to this neutral, amoral place, which really confused the viewer morally and left you walking away very unsettled. So that kind of stuff was not normal when you go back and look at Hollywood pictures. So there is that. Don't use Jesus Christ's name in vain. Don't recognize evil as good. And then two more here. The triangle, that is the love of a third party for one already married, needs careful handling. So talking about adultery or talking about some sort of promiscuous sexual thing, need to handle that carefully. The treatment should not throw sympathy against marriage as an institution, and criminals should not be made heroes, even if they are historical criminals. So this, again, directly from Hays Code. The fruits speak for themselves, ladies and gentlemen. If you go back and watch films from 1934 to 1958, which I believe was the dates when this was popular and enacted, 1968, excuse me, for the most part, this really did yield some great movies. Now, it didn't always work, but it definitely produced better movies than what we have now. So I want to get into the top 5 movies for America, my pick for top 5 movies for America. But before that, I want to talk about Cecil B. DeMille's 10 Commandments. And I just want to throw this out here before we get into the top 5, because this is a movie that is great. Charlton Heston, 10 Commandments, great movie. But I wanted to bring it up because, one, it's just one of the greatest, Hollywood movies to ever exist. If you watch it, you might be okay, a little hokey, some of the special effects, but it's an incredible movie. And if you are a viewer of the show and you've seen some of my episodes, you know that I like historical documents. I like collecting things from Americana, American history. And some of the things in my collection that I have are actually original documentations from the movie, The 10 Commandments, that Cecil B. DeMille produced and that Charlton Heston starred in. And this, I have 2 of these. I'll show these to you. This is a Paramount Pictures promotional booklet. This is an original Paramount Pictures promotional booklet for the movie, The 10 Commandments. This is from when the movie came out. It's original from the 50s. And this was printed, produced, paid for by Paramount Studios. Now, Paramount's one of the biggest studios, production studios in the United States. They still are today. And in this pamphlet, they show some incredible art from the movie. Various pictures, chariot scenes, really great stuff. It has some things about the actors, just basic information about the movie. But then it gets into the 10 Commandments, and it actually spells out in this document the law by which men live. And it has this great explanation about why the 10 Commandments are necessary for America. I will read. The 10 Commandments are not the laws. They are the law. Man has made 32 million laws since they were handed down to Moses on Mount Sinai more than 3,000 years ago, but he has never improved on God's law. The 10 Commandments are the principles by which man may live with God and man may live with man. They are the expressions of the mind of God for his creatures. They are the character and the guide of human liberty, for there can be no liberty without the law. The motion picture, The 10 Commandments, I'm reading quote from this. This is by Paramount Pictures, is a modern as the morning's newspaper because the struggle between the forces represented by Moses and those represented by Pharaoh are still being waged today. Are men free souls under God, or are they property of the state? Are men to be ruled by law or by the whims of an individual? The answer to these timely questions were given to Moses on Mount Sinai. Like the divine source from which they came, they are eternal. Unbelievable. That is a statement from Paramount Pictures about the 10 Commandments from the Bible. It also, at the back, has this image of Moses above the Liberty Bell of the United States of America, which is in Philadelphia. And then it has Benjamin Franklin's seal that he designed, which has the Egyptians drowning in the Red Sea with the text, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." This, ladies and gentlemen, is a representation of what Hollywood used to be in the 1950s. How far have we fallen from that standard? I also have another one here. This is another original from the 1950s, just a different version of that pamphlet by Paramount Studios, saying the exact same thing. And copyright 1956, Paramount Pictures Corporation, all rights reserved, printed and paid for by them. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that Hollywood used to uphold American values. Hollywood used to uphold biblical principles upon which our country was built. So that is what we need to return to. If we want to get back to the golden age of Hollywood, that is how we do it, by getting back to what America is, our roots, our heritage, our Christian foundations, what made this country great, and reflecting that again on the big screen. Incredible. So my top 5 movies to make America great again and make movies great again. Okay, this is in no particular order per se, and these aren't my top 5 favorite movies, but they're movies I think speak to something America needs to return to, and therefore I think they are our top 5. So number 1, 1959, Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ. That is my first movie for America. I think this is an incredible movie. If you have not seen Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, you need to. It's an incredible, incredible movie. It was done in 1959. It was directed by William Wyler, who's an incredible, incredible producer and director. This movie had pretty much no CGI, no digital manipulation. It's not like when you watch a movie today and you're inundated with all this tech and all this animation. You don't know what's real. You don't know what's fake. This movie was done the old-fashioned way. The chariot scenes, the everything was done by hand. Incredible movie. But ultimately, Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, talks about Christianity, talks about the gospel. It talks about what made, the Christian ethos arise, the death, resurrection of Jesus Christ. It articulates that in such a clear and interesting way. And this movie was not just some fringe movie that didn't get a lot of traction. It was a movie that was number 1. I mean, this was a massive breakthrough movie. It was like the Titanic of the age as it comes to movies. It did extraordinarily well. And like I said, it talked about Christianity, talked about the gospel in a clear way. And this was mainstream Hollywood. I want to play for you a clip. This is cut 2, a scene from the movie. And if you don't know Ben-Hur, you need to see it. It's a long movie, but it's incredible. And it's about this character, Judah Ben-Hur. He's a Jewish prince. He gets sold into slavery, and it follows his story of being sold into slavery, returning, coming and fighting this brother-like figure of his in this chariot race, and really encountering Christ during that whole journey. And this clip 2, is Ben-Hur, the main character played by Charlton Heston, encountering Christ during his slavery. Here's cut 2.
Wait! No water for him.
God, help me.
said no water for him.
So just a little clip, but as you can see, very powerful imagery, very artistic, but it gets to the point, which is it glorifies God, it magnifies Him, and this was mainstream Hollywood, incredible. This movie Ben Hur was based upon the book Ben Hur by Lew Wallace, which was really one of the best-selling books in America at a time. It was number 2 next to the Bible, and actually, this book was so powerful that it touched President James Garfield. And we have a picture here of the letter that President Garfield wrote. The letter's not showing up there for some reason, but that's okay. I've got it here. But Garfield read this book. Of course, he was the president of the United States, and he said that it was one of the most powerful books that he had ever read. Now, I actually have a very rare copy of Ben Hur. This is one of the originals. There's the letter there, you can see. But this is one of the originals. This is from what year was this book from? This is from 1892. So this is the 1892 copy of Ben Hur. They call it the Garfield edition. And this was the first illustrated copy of Ben Hur. And this book is interesting and significant because it actually has in it that forward, that little note that President Garfield wrote to the author of Ben Hur, Lew Wallace. And this is what he said in that letter. He said, "I have this morning finished reading Ben Hur." And this is the President of the United States saying this. "And I must thank you for the pleasure it has given me. The theme was difficult, but you've handled it with great delicacy and power. Several of the scenes, such as the wise men in the desert, the sea fight, will, I am sure, take a permanent and high place in literature. With this beautiful and reverent book, you have lightened the burden of my daily life and renewed our acquaintance, which began at Shiloh," because they fought in the Civil War together. Wallace and Garfield did. So this was a book that had extraordinary impact on the United States, extraordinary impact on our culture, and it goes back all the way to the Civil War and to our presidents. And the book also was turned into a play. It was turned into one of the biggest Broadway plays. We have a little bit of a chart here that shows some of the diagrams they made when they turned Ben Hur into a stage play. The chariot scene, you can see there, they have a little bit of a drawing about how they did the chariot scene in the play. I have a playbill here, original playbill from the Ben Hur play. One was like 1 million people saw it. It was significant. But remember how we talked about in movies that it's tough nowadays to find out who's good, who's bad, who's the good guy, the bad guy. The director of Ben Hur, William Wyler, he said this about movies. He said, "There is nothing clever about confusion." And I think that's a great quote, that there's nothing clever about confusion. So we want our movies to be clear. We want them to have a good moral principle to them. And I think that is very worthwhile. Number two, second movie for America, the 1939 film, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. This is a great film. It has the great Jimmy Stewart. This was a 1939 hit directed by Frank Capra. Incredible movie. It's about a naive, that's what the summaries say, but he was ultimately a very good-hearted youth leader in America. He was appointed to fill a vacancy in the United States Senate. This is the character that Jimmy Stewart plays. And he was an idealist. He believed in America. He believed in our system. He believed in a Republican form of government. And he wanted to build this camp for boys. He wanted to fund this camp for boys. And the deep state, honestly, tried to stop him from building this camp for boys. And it leads to basically a filibuster where Jimmy Stewart's character begins a filibuster on the 7th floor and starts railing into the deep state and railing into the bureaucracy and railing in to the swamp. And it's an incredible movie about civic responsibility, civic duty. And Jimmy Stewart does this beautifully. Here is a clip. This is cut number 3 of Jimmy Stewart filibustering, much better than Cory Booker, on the Senate floor, calling out the deep state. Here's cut 3.
I guess this is just another lost cause, Mr. Payne. All you people don't know about lost causes. Mr. Payne does. He said once they were the only causes worth fighting for. And he fought for them once. For the only reason any man ever fights for them. Because of just one plain, simple rule. Love thy neighbor. And in this world today full of hatred, a man who knows that one rule has a great trust. You know that rule, Mr. Payne. And I loved you for it just as my father did. And you know that you fight for the lost causes harder than for any others. Yes, you even die for them. Like a man we both knew, Mr. Payne. You think I'm licked?
So he ends up going into this whole great speech about lost causes and about being an idealist and about standing up for what's right. And Mr. Payne's this man who Jimmy Stewart's character trusted, was a mentor to him, a fellow senator, ended up selling out, going with the deep state, going with the establishment. And there he's saying, basically a big indictment on him. But this movie, again, mainstream movie, did very well. Mainstream Hollywood, won tons of awards. This is a film that talked about what made America great: a Republican system of government, civic responsibility, idealism, fighting against corruption, fighting against bureaucracy. That is a great movie every American needs to see. Number 3, movies for America. The 1957 film 12 Angry Men. This one holds a special place in my heart. I actually played one of the jurors in 12 Angry Men in a stage play in St. Louis at a time. That was a lot of fun. But this is a movie that holds a special place in my heart. Great Henry Fonda movie. He plays the lead character. And this movie, if you haven't seen it before, it's filmed in one room. So you think about movies nowadays, you see some of this imagery on the screen. It's incredible. You think about movies nowadays, they have massive landscapes, all this action, all this drama, colors, explosion. This movie was filmed in one room. Pretty much the whole time. There was a courtroom scene at the beginning, and then there was a scene outside the courthouse at the end. But 95% of the movies inside this courtroom, black and white, very little music, if any. And it's about this man who is played by Henry Fonda, who goes and he is a part of this jury for a murder trial against a young man who killed somebody allegedly. And all these jurors just want to get over with it. They want to get in, do a guilty verdict, get out, get back to their lives. And one man, played by Henry Fonda, says, no, I don't think he killed who we think he killed. I don't think he's guilty. And Henry Fonda ends up making this case for innocence for this young man and going through the legal process with all these guys and calling out their various moral woes, selfishness, impatience, prejudice, all these different things. He goes through, and the character development in this movie is unbelievable. But at the end of the movie, he ends up flipping all the other 11 jurors and gets them to vote not guilty, and justice is served in what otherwise would have been just a wash injustice. They just made him guilty because of who he was, profiled him. He was a kid from the wrong side of the tracks. And they just moved on. But Henry Fonda's character does the work, goes through, makes the case, and really shows that citizens who are informed, engaged, and activated can make a big difference. And that's what this movie's all about. It's about the jury process. It's about being a good citizen. It's about being a good American and going through the process, doing it justly, doing it rightly, and seeking truth, even if it comes at a physical inconvenience to you. Maybe you lose some time at work or don't get to go to a ball game, etc. But it's an incredible, incredible movie. 12 Angry Men. Unbelievable. One of the best films of all time. Number 4. This one's kind of a wild card. And this one I put in there because it's from 1992, a little bit more recent. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It does have a lot of swearing in it, so a little bit of a qualification there. But it's a great movie, and that is the 1992 film A Few Good Men. It has Tom Cruise in it, Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore, Cuba Gooding Jr. makes an appearance in it. Kevin Bacon's in it. Star-studded. Kiefer Sutherland. Great movie. But if you don't know what A Few Good Men is, and I have to say, I've seen this movie so many times. I've seen it probably like 15 times, no joke. It's an amazing movie. It's about a JAG lawyer in the Navy, Tom Cruise's character, Danny. And he is this young, hotshot lawyer, just wants to get through, wants to just cruise through his career, doesn't want to give any court cases the time of day, just wants to get through, make as much money as possible, get as many cases under his belt. And he's known for never having made it into a courtroom. He's known for just coming to settlements between the parties before it ever hits court. And he does that to his own credit, to pat himself on the back. And then the military assigns him this case of 2 Marines down in Gitmo who allegedly killed a young private Willie Santiago. And Tom Cruise is assigned to this case. He says, you know what? I'll come up with a plea deal. We'll settle it. These guys will go to jail for a while for killing this young man, maybe 20 or so years, and then that will be that. But Demi Moore's character, who's a more seasoned lawyer in the Navy, she sees that there's actually something more to this, that there's corruption, that down in Gitmo, there is a Colonel Jessup, played by Jack Nicholson, who's actually kind of a deep state military type of a person who has extraordinary ego, extraordinary personal ambition. And they end up going after him because he's been issuing these code reds, which are these unethical, military, interdisciplinary, violent measures. And Tom Cruise's character ends up taking this colonel to court, pressing him, exposing his deep state nature, his deep state connections, where he's doctoring logbooks, he's lying, he's weaponizing the system to push himself towards becoming a general. And it's a great movie about the American justice system in its true, fully functioning, good manifestation. It's about people seeking the truth, going against power, even when that power is corrupt and deep-stated and can weaponize the system against you at great cost. But it's about doing that, taking the courage, and winning. And one thing I love about this movie is at the end, the 2 guys who you're kind of rooting for, the two Marine privates, they end up actually still getting punished because they did the wrong thing. They followed orders that were unethical, and they got punished, but it was a lighter punishment. They got honorably discharged, but it was a great ending to the movie because these guys ended up doing something wrong, even though they shouldn't have been ordered to do it. They were under this bad colonel, but they still got punished because it was the wrong thing to do. And the right thing to do would have been to disobey those orders because they were illegitimate. And it's a great movie, and it has a great moral to it. So, Few Good Men. All right, number 5, probably one of the most respected movies to come out of America. Everyone has heard it. Very few have seen it. 1941, Citizen Kane. This is an incredible movie. Just unbelievable. I watched it for the first time last year, and it shook me to the core. The meaning of it is incredible. Orson Welles is the mastermind behind it. He's also the actor. And it is about a man who comes from a broken home, who becomes a journalist, a media tycoon, rises to the highest level of power, seeks political office, gets everything in life that you can imagine materially that one could hope for. And he still is broken. He still doesn't have meaning. And at the end of the film, I won't spoil it because I've spoiled all the other ones, but it shows what he was missing in his life, and that was family, it was community, it was meaning, it was religion. And it's a powerful film about the dark side of the American dream, of if we just purely go for materialism and wealth and power without morality, without family, without truth, it leads to not only the death of the body, but the death of the soul. And it is an incredibly powerful film. And it's just the cinematography and everything about it technically is unmatched, but the meaning is unmatched as well. So there you go. Top 5 films for America. Make Hollywood great again. I changed my poster back here to Indiana Jones for the occasion. I love movies. I'm sure you love movies. But the point of this broadcast today is to talk about how we need to get back to good cinema, good morals, good entertainment in the United States, because we're seeing positive developments in the United States politically. But to truly make America great again, we also have to have a spiritual revival, which we talked about in former episodes. But we also need to have a cultural revival, which would come from that spiritual revival, where our movies, our literature, our art, our music reflects who we are as a people. Because right now, it's an accurate reflection. It's dark, it's satanic, it's progressive left, it's horrible. You go to the movies and you watch the previews and you look at the posters, like, whoa, something sick and dark is going on in this country. And that's true. We need to change the culture. We need to have a spiritual awakening. And then we can make America truly great again. So thank you all so much for watching. I am your host, Andrew Muller. Please go and support our sponsor, Jase Medical. Go to jase.com, JASE.com. Use promo code Muller, MULLER. Get some of those great ivermectin kits, antibiotic kits to be prepared to help your family and support the show. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch you next time. Until then, keep it local, keep it God honoring, and keep it American.